24th of June for the Planning Applications Committee. Could I just remind all members to make sure their mobile phones are switched off, and note that this meeting may be recorded and subsequently made available to the public for listening purposes. Okay. Gillian, could you read out the Sederunt?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have 17 members present. We are quorate. We have apologies from Councillor Groom and Councillor McGregor. Thank you.
Thanks, Gillian. Is there any declarations of interest? Unfortunately. Yeah. No. Any other members? Any? Thank you. From the minutes of the previous meeting. Ian.
Yes, paragraph 2.1. It has that I declared an interest in that was related to the applicant. It was the applicant's family was known to me.
That's fine, Ian. Gillian, could you outline the procedures of this meeting?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or other appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determinant issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The Chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in Council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The Chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak to make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No questions may be asked of members. The order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee, and then applicants or their agents. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order, and a copy of the public speaking list is available from the committee officer taking notes of today's proceedings. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, except for national and major developments, which by their very nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. The Chairman of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allocated to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the Council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application. Thank you.
Thanks, Gillian. Going to item 4 is the land at Barwhillanty Estate and Glenswinton Farm, Parton, Mochrum Fell Wind Farm, 13P/2/0327. Just read out what members are eligible to take part in this, because it's a deferral from the last meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, only those members who heard the original representation on the 22nd of April 2015 are allowed to determine this application. Those members who heard the original representation but did not attend the site visit are also allowed to determine the application. The members are as follows: Councillor Martin, Councillor Dempster, Councillor Blake, Councillor Carruthers, Councillor Dick, Councillor Dryborough, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Geddes, Councillor Maitland, Councillor McCautry, Councillor McComb, Councillor McKee, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Witts. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. We'll just go through. This was deferred from the last meeting, and we had a site visit, which I must admit was quite interesting, considering the hike we had up to one of the viewpoints. We've got Dean. Dean got to run through the slides again to refresh members on this, and we also have the landscape architect here, just for any points of clarification, not to go over any points that were raised at the last meeting. Thank you, Dean.
Sorry, Chair, I should just say that unfortunately the screen which Dean is looking at is not working today, so unfortunately Dean will have to angle round and try and look at the screen behind.
Okay, thank you. That's the application site. It's located to the north and west of Mochrum Fell, around 3 kilometres west of Corsic. That's the original 11 turbine layout. The amendment resulted in the removal of turbines 7, 10 and 11 as indicated on that site layout. That's the amended layout. As you see, those 3 turbines have been removed from that scheme. That's showing the location of the scheme relative to the Galloway Hills Regional Scenic Area. The eastern boundary falls around 2 kilometres from the nearest proposed turbine. It's the hatched area to the left of the red dots there. That's just a typical turbine design. 126.5 metres high to tip, aside from turbine 5, which would be 10 metres lower to tip. That's the zone of theoretical visibility, assuming a bare earth scenario where there are no obstructions screening views towards the turbines. Most significant theoretical visibility is within 10 kilometres, with visibility more confined to the south and west out to 20 kilometres. That's the zone of theoretical visibility again, but within the 10 kilometres, showing more detail at a more localised level. The visibility is the green areas, again, assuming a bare earth scenario. This is the comparative wire lines showing the original scheme at the top and then the amended scheme at the bottom. And this is the view from northeast from Parton Walk. And this is photo montage from the same position on the original layout. And that's the amended scheme, with reduced to 8 turbines. Again, this is another comparative wire line demonstrating the difference between the original scheme and the amended scheme. This is a view east from Benning Hill, which is on the west side of Loch Ken in an elevated position. Again, you've got the original scheme at the top and the amended scheme at the bottom. And the cone of what you have there on the bottom, on the horizon, is the cone of Mochrum Fell, just to the immediate right of the rightmost turbine. That's a photo montage from the same viewpoint. Again, this is the original scheme. And there you've got the cone of Mochrum Fell on the horizon there. That's the amended scheme, having removed 3 turbines from that. Now it's the 8 turbine scheme. This is another comparative wire line. This one is viewed northwest from Kirkpatrick Durham. Again, you've got the top is the 11 turbine scheme, bottom the 8 turbine scheme. And there's the photo montage from the same viewpoint. Mochrum Fell, you have centre horizon there. That's the original layout, and that's the amended layout. From this viewpoint, it was identified that there'd be no difference in the impact on visibility from this position. This is a view west from Nether Mochrum, which is a minor single-track road approaching properties there on the south side of Mochrum Fell. Pointed out one of the nearest properties to the scheme, Mochrum. That's in the original scheme layout. You can just see turbine there in the low point, whereas Mochrum Fell falls to the left, and another turbine further on the darkened horizon there to the left. And this is the scenario in the amended scheme. This is a view from in amongst the actual site. This is a view from Mochrum Fell Hill Fort in the scenario of the original scheme. And that's the same image with the amended scheme. Again, from Mochrum Fell Hill Fort, looking north, that's the original layout. And that's in the amended situation. This map shows the cumulative wind farms within 35 kilometres of the site, the nearest being the approved Black Craig Wind Farm to the north, shown the nearest group in there in blue above the red dots. And this image shows the cumulative visibility. It's the darkened areas on the map between the proposal and Black Craig Wind Farm. And this is a cumulative wireframe with Black Craig from Benham viewpoint, which we showed you earlier in the presentation. You've got the scheme, the original layout of the scheme with 11 turbines. That's Mochrum Fell scheme is on the right there. The 3 turbines on the right are removed in the amended scheme, and there you have Black Craig Wind Farm on the left. This is an image towards the proposed entrance, access into the site, looking north towards Parton. Just there on the right-hand side of the road is an existing field access. This is moving to the other side of the access, looking south. And this is looking up the existing farm track that will be improved and upgraded to accommodate wind farm traffic. And then the track would make its way to the right, leave the track as it leaves the image there, and make its way to the right across the bottom of the rise there, and then would go over the horizon. And then it'd make its way across this landscape. This is a view from a minor road up above to the east of Parton. It'd make its way through this landscape until it gets to this point where it would meet a junction of minor roads to the east of Parton. It would cross from the right and then enter the existing track on the left there. And that's just a very approximation of where the track will come in and then come towards the viewer there, up the track in the foreground. This is a view from the top of Mochrum Fell, looking west across Glenswinton. And then panning right from that, this is the general area of the proposed wind farm in the forestry there. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Dean, members remind you we're now be in session. Is there any points of clarification? No. Yeah. Sorry, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I've had a bit of difficulty with this report in the sense that it seems to be presenting the proposal as a negotiated position. This was obviously raised at the first time we met, and it's been discussed. But would it be cleaner or even appropriate to revisit this application if it was submitted on the basis of 8 turbines? Because all throughout the report we referred to the removal, the amended position, the removal of 3 turbines, when really what we're looking at is, as far as I can gather, 8 turbines, and there should be the appropriate consultation based on the 8 turbines and not the 11, and then a negotiated position on the difference between 11 and 8. So it just lends itself to confusion, I feel, so we're not actually looking at a straight proposal, but I'd welcome any comment on that.
Dean?
Well, what we're asking members to consider is as a proposal for 8 turbines, but we felt it was necessary, or not necessary, but it's certainly part of the background to the scheme, not necessarily to how you determine the application, but it has been amended. It is a negotiated position, so it was felt that it was relevant to present that because it is part of the background to the scheme. Although, there's no doubt that members are being asked to consider and determine a scheme for 8 turbines, and 8 turbines have been presented today.
Just to come back on that, so just for my own comfort really, but is there a material, is it a significant material difference from the original application for 11 turbines to an amended application for 8 turbines to the extent that it would warrant a new application?
Dean, sorry.
It's quite normal practice where a planning application for any kind of development, if it's identified that it's not acceptable, but it could be amended to come within the range of acceptability, that we would and are expected to go back to the applicant to negotiate and discuss what the issues are that make an application unacceptable. So in this case, it was considered that the scheme, the 11 turbine scheme, wasn't supportable, but there was possibly opportunities to look at it again and reduce the scheme to make it acceptable. And that's what's been presented in the report, is that the amendment of the scheme to 8 turbines has now brought it within the range of acceptability and compliant with Council's relevant policies.
David?
For example, if it was an 8 turbine scheme and they were wanting to amend it up to an 11 turbine scheme, there's no doubt that would be a material change and would require a whole new planning application. Normally, as Dean was alluding to, when it is revising downwards into the realms of acceptability, that can be dealt with within the same application, but is usually subject to re-advertisement and reconsultation, which I would take it happened with this one as well.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. A couple of points. On page 17, the site is described as being in an area of greatest potential for medium typology turbines. But on page 29, the case officer states that the site proposed is within other areas. I had a look at the local development plan, and the map on page 84 of the LDP clearly indicates that the site is within other areas. Could I have clarification, please?
Dean?
Sorry, could you tell me what paragraph you're referring to on page 29? Because I'm just looking at
Page 17. It is the final statement in the enclosed area. The site would be in an area of greatest potential for medium typologies.
Janet?
It's an area of lower sensitivity for landscape interest, but I think there's other interests, and I think because it's a rectangular line, it's probably the bird interest. I have got the supplementary guidance with me, which has got the relevant maps in, and I can show you that. I've got it in a box here, but it's not in the LDP. But it's basically the different data that contributed to the LDP map. There's a landscape sensitivity map. This area is in the lower landscape sensitivity, but there's other data sets. As I say, I think it's probably the bird interest, but I'd have to spend a little bit of time getting that out if it's useful.
Ian?
Chair,
Oh, sorry.
come back here. Could you therefore confirm that the case officer, his view is correct when he states that this is in other areas? This is stated on page 29
What?
of the case officer's
What
report.
paragraph?
Sorry, could you confirm which paragraph on page 29?
Yes, indeed. 410, down near the bottom.
Yeah, we can. It's confirmed that the map that you referred to on page 84 of the LDP, the site falls within a white area, which is considered other areas, and you can see that on the map on page 84 below, immediately below the green area, and enclosed by the sort of pinky red area. Okay.
Thank you for that, yes. I had one other point. The mitigation, the removal of the turbines, appears to be based upon an exercise where he compared the impact of lowering the height of the turbines compared to removing some of the turbines. Can I ask what height reductions were considered in that exercise?
Dean?
Well, there were a number of scenarios presented where they either reduced the amount of turbines and dropped the maximum height. I think there's a various images here, but the minimum they showed was a maximum tip height of 110 metres.
Right, so there was no height reduction below 110 metres.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ian?
Thank you, Chairman. It's just going back to the something that David mentioned during his explanation of how an application could be negotiated. He mentioned that in this particular case, it would be subject, of course, to re-advertising and the notices. Can the case officer confirm that that was actually done?
I think he did, actually. You confirm that, then?
Yeah, the EIA regulations require re-advertisement. That was undertaken in a fresh round of consultation and notification so we could receive further comments.
Ian? Jane?
Yes, I do, Chairman. We're in session at the moment, so I think we're sort of voicing our opinions with respect to how this proposal fits with our policies. And I would like to just say a couple of things and then possibly hear from other members, and then if you permit me to come back after that. There is, I think, an issue about the size of the turbines. They're 126.5 metres, except for one of them, and none in the area is as large as that. And I think we are in great doubt as to whether or not that particular area of the landscape has the capacity to absorb that sort of height of turbine. The statutory consultee, SNH, majored on that, Chairman. They particularly concentrated their remarks on the heights of the turbines. Our site visit was particularly interesting, I think, with respect to seeing Mochrum Fell, with respect to how these particular turbines would look. Actually, what came out was that the turbines, the height of the turbines, tip-wise, will exceed Mochrum Fell height itself. That is to say, an important local landmark by up to 150 feet. And that, I think, is not insignificant, given the actual scale and size of what is being proposed. So we've got to look at the relationship of these turbines, I would suggest, Chairman, to Mochrum Fell. I think the effect will be overpowering, and I do think it will create significant issues of scale in respect to local landscape characters. There are 3 of them mentioned in particular, I think LCT 8, LCT 13 and LCT 16. And there will be views, for example, again, that we looked at from High Banan, which is a promoted tourist viewpoint. What was completely clear from that was that that High Mochrum is not flattened out in the landscape as it appears from the photographs and the wireframes. Actually, it's very distinctive landmark and framed from that viewpoint by trees. You're meant to look out over the loch and enjoy High Mochrum, no question about it, Mochrum Fell. So it seems to me that that area was of particular interest to us, and it is a promoted tourist viewpoint, as I think I said. I don't think we should ignore the fact that Core Path 221 circles Mochrum Fell. This proposal would change the current sense of walking somewhere quiet and isolated, so there would be a change to that to us. Chairman, Mochrum Fell is a really significant local landmark. Actually, it's part of a national network of trig points. Nowhere is it mentioned anywhere that there is a trig point on the top of Mochrum Fell. Trig points are on easily visible high points. That's why they were put there. They were designed to connect high points for maximum visibility across landscapes. While I accept that from a very great distance, obviously wind turbines reduce in scale, the fact is that this is actually a really important landmark, and we should not ignore that. I think that the proposal is particularly unsuitable. I think it detracts from the focus and setting of the hill. Chairman, the other thing we must think about is the cumulative effect of Mochrum Fell with Black Craig. Our site visit also showed us that on the A712, there is actually going to be a certain amount of coalescence in terms of viewing with Weather Hill. Now, that's mentioned in the landscape studies, but it's not actually mentioned specifically in the report. And as we drove along there, it was absolutely obvious that you could see Weather Hill. And members might be interested to know that Weather Hill is only 91 metres high. These are 126. I mean, there is a substantial difference. And I think, I do actually thank the members for going on the site visit, because that was very, very obvious to me. I don't want to particularly hog the thing, Chairman, so if you want to stop me at this point, I've got a couple more remarks to make. I do think that that the proposal will change the nature of the LCT. That, in fact, is actually stated in the applicant's own reports. And the suggestion is that it will make turbines the dominant feature of that particular landscape, LCT 18. And within a 3 to 4 kilometre range, the suggestion is actually in the applicant's own submissions that a subtype of foothills with turbines will be created. I think we should consider that quite seriously. Our own, that's Dumfries and Galloway Council Landscape Capacity Study, which is the important thing that we have to think about, suggests that there is limited opportunity for large-scale typology wind turbines, and there is increased scope for small to medium typology, away from the more sensitive edges of the landscape capacity types 16.8 and the drumlin pastures of LCT 13. I would suggest, Chairman, that the proposal is too ambitious in scale for this particular site. I don't think it complies adequately with our current policies. The shift in landscape character is serious and significant, and given that the proposal lies so close to sensitive lowland areas, I would suggest that it is unacceptable. But I'm very happy to hear from other members. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Tom?
Thank you, Chairman. I think it was a very erudite contribution from Councillor Maitland. I'm quite happy to second if she's moving. And I'm very glad to see she's had a Damascene conversion about the site visit. I think that, particularly with these type of developments, a site visit is always very useful. I think you can get a greater idea of the scale than you ever can from any wee photographs or maps put up on the wall there. So I'm happy to second Jane if she's so moving.
Thank you, Tom. Any other member? Jane, could you read out your motion again, please?
I can read out a motion. I hope that what I've said, my remarks, would be the background behind the motion. But the motion that I would like to put forward is that we refuse it on the following grounds, which is that the proposal would have significant detrimental impacts on the surrounding area in terms of landscape character and visual amenity. As such, it would be contrary to Council Development Plan policy, as stated in Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan policies in 1 and in 2, and to associated guidance in the Dumfries and Galloway Wind Farm Landscape Capacity Study. I would also like to suggest that it should be refused on the fact that the scale of the turbines would be inappropriate to the scale and character of the landscape setting and the wider environment, and as such the proposal is contrary to Council Development Plan policy on siting and design, as stated in Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan policies in 2 and OP2. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. David?
I don't have a problem with everything you were saying until you came to the bit where you were saying it was contrary to policy, because as officers we've assessed that it isn't contrary to policy. If you took those out, I think that would be a highly competent motion to put forward, but it's up to yourself.
Acceptable, Jane?
That's quite acceptable, yes, thank you.
Is there any other members otherwise minded? Nope. Gillian, can you read out the decision?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's been a decision made to refuse the application on the grounds that there'd be a significant detrimental impact on the surrounding areas, landscape character and visual amenity, and the scale is inappropriate and the landscape character in relation to the landscape character. Thank you.
Fine. Can we go on? Item 5 on the agenda, the site adjacent to 16 Rhonepark Crescent, Crossmichael, Castle Douglas, 15/B/2/0098. I'll just allow, before we go on, I'll allow members of the public to leave, if so wish. Right, I think we're all settled down now. We'll move on to, as I say, item 5, the site adjacent to 16 Rhonepark Crescent, Crossmichael, Castle Douglas, 15/B/2/0098, and we've got Judith Turnbull speaking to this. Judith?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is the application site. It's on a piece of land between existing properties on Rhonepark Crescent and the Scottish Water Sewage Works in Crossmichael. It's situated close to the shores of Loch Hen and has various ecological designations, as well as being within the Galloway Hills Regional Scenic Area. The principle of a dwelling house on this site has been established by the granting of an application for planning permission in principle in June 2014. This is the block plan. You can see the siting of the house, which has been dictated to some extent by the existence of a sewer across the site, which runs from the top left, outlined in blue, from the top left to the bottom right. You can see the proposed access and parking and turning area. This is floor plan, 3-bedroomed dwelling house, symmetrical on plan, and for clarification, there's no accommodation in the roof space. These are the elevations. The front elevation, the street elevation is on the bottom left, and the rear elevation, which would be facing the loch, is on the top right. The finishes to the roof would be natural slate, and to the walls would be textured off-white render with natural stone and a feature panel to the front door and natural stone substructure. The windows and doors would be white UPVC. This is an indicative street scene from the east, which shows the proposed dwelling house in context with numbers 15, 16 and 22 Rhonepark Crescent. There's the sections through the site down to the edge of the loch, showing a finished floor level of 50.529 metres above ordnance datum, which involves only localised excavation and fill to existing ground levels. The Flood Authority and SEPA are satisfied with the level of the house in terms of flooding, with the finished floor level being above the 1 in 200 year probable flood level. Moving on to the images, this is a view taken from Rhonepark Crescent. The site's behind the post and wire fencing on the left-hand side of the road. Looking up, you can see number 22 Rhonepark Crescent, which is adjacent to the turning hammerhead area on the road. This shows the full extent of the site, taken from the north, just in the hammerhead area, looking down. This is a view down the access road to number 23, Rhonepark Crescent, the Scottish water sites visible on the left-hand side in among the landscaping you can see in the edge of the photograph. This is a view taken from the edge of the Loch Hen, looking straight up. The site there's actually a small field between where I'm standing and the site. So the site's the sort of fenced area at the top, directly in front of number 22. So in conclusion, the siting and design of the proposed dwelling house is considered acceptable, as are the access and servicing arrangements, subject to roads conditions as recommended, and the application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Judith. Any members' points of clarification? Nope. Read out a wee bit. Gillian?
Thank you, Chair. Just to make members aware that for the objectors speaking in relation to the next item, the Chair has agreed a time limit of 9 minutes. And also the applicant's agent has turned up today and wants to make representation. He was away on holiday, so at the Chair's discretion and in the interest of natural justice, the Chair is allowing him 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. Could we have speaking on behalf of numerous objectors is Angela Piercy. Come forward, Angela.
Thank you. If I might just stand. Good morning. Just allow me a moment or two to organise myself. I shall be brief.
You've got 9 minutes, Angela, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Thank you. I might even manage it in that, you never know. On behalf of all those I represent, I wish to make 2 points relating to OP1 and OP2 of the LDP. Lack of compatibility, sense of place, and being sympathetic to the landscape. The proposed development is incompatible in the following ways. It is a 1.5-storey height house trying to disguise itself as a single-storey bungalow. It has slate on the roof, not tiles, different external wall finishes, a different slope of the roof, 2 oriel windows as opposed to a maximum of 1 that other bungalows have, and an enclosed front garden compared to open plan. That's quite a lot, really. And with this, the developer is hoping to be part of Rhonepark Crescent. We realise that perhaps not every single detail needs to be exactly the same, and it is appreciated that some effort has been made to be compatible. A bit chopped off the original ridiculous proposed height and the removal of a mass of dark whinstone frontage. However, we feel that these modifications do not quite go far enough. The position of the site is particularly important. It is not on Riverside Lane, as is Sienna. It is not on Main Street, as is Ardendee, one of the oldest buildings of the village, but on Rhonepark Crescent, which, like Templand, is of a particular style and design, with roof ridge heights in uniformity. Out of the 24 houses in Rhonepark, 23 are single-storey height bungalows. It's true to say that there is one 1.5-storey height building, number 23, but it nestles beautifully into the bottom of the hillside at the end of a private track. This proposed development is not destined to be at the bottom of that hill and is at the street end of the track. Therefore, its height becomes all the more important. It is recognised as being about 1 metre higher than the bulk of the Rhonepark bungalows. We reckon it to be 0.7 of a metre. A part of a metre doesn't sound a lot, does it? And for those of you who, like me, only understand feet and inches and what things look like if you actually kind of see it, to give you an idea, we are looking at, if we use the table as an example, where's the 4? There. We're talking that height sticking out like a sore thumb above the ridge heights of numbers 5 to 16 of Rhonepark. Putting that out and over above those ridges gives an indication of how it would dominate both the background landscape and the skyline. To conclude, to base the 1.5-storey height on the fact that 2 houses in other streets are higher and 1 house with a Rhonepark Crescent address, which is positioned separately from the road, seems disproportionate to the 23 houses of single-storey height which make up the road and row in which this development is sited. We request, therefore, that approval is given, but with a further condition, one requiring the ridge height to be reduced from its current 5.51 metres to no more than 4.9 metres to bring about compatibility and allow the house to nestle into the skyline and background landscape. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Angela. Any members? Any questions? You just clear something up here. As I say, on our paper, it says in the locality there's a two-storey house, Ardennee.
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 It's in Main Street.
That's classed as the main street, not in
It's
Rhonepark.
Main Street.
That's fine.
Yes.
Thanks, Angela. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Right, could we have Mike Shepherd, the agent, please? Thank you, Mike. You've got 3 minutes, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Thanks very much. First of all, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Holidays do occur and stuff like this. My name is Mike Shepherd, Lead and Design Associates and Planning Consultant for the clients who are Mr. and Mrs. Green. Basically, I'm highly delighted that the Planning Department has finally agreed that everything meets the acquired status on this little bungalow. It is a bungalow. It's a 30-degree roof pitch, which normal bungalows are 35 to 32. The other thing is its normal height of ceilings is 2.45, which is normal plasterboard height. So there's nothing, and we're not trying to make it like a story and a half or even 2 stories. Basically, I want to say that I'm happy with the decision of the planners, and really the reason I'm sitting here is to hopefully answer any questions that any member would like to put to me.
Thanks, Mike. Any members? Ian?
Just a quick one on the roof pitch, because the roof pitch and the size is one of the subjects that's came up, obviously. In regards to that, I think it's saying it's 30-degree pitch, and that's a standard size for a single-storey bungalow. What in your terms would be the standard size for a story and a half has been mooted previously?
Previously, a story and a half has worked between 40 degrees and 45 degrees. Just to add as well, the rest of Rhonepark Crescent, mainly bungalows, are 22.5 degrees. Hence the reason that they've got tiles rather than slates, because slates prefer a steeper angle.
Mike? Patsy?
Thank you. The objectors are not objecting altogether with your design. It's the height of the roof pitch, and they were suggesting that perhaps it could come down to 4.9 metres. How would that be a possibility, do you think?
Sorry, anything's possible, but I think 30 degrees is low enough, quite honestly, for a slate, because it's an exposed site, and slate has to be nailed, getting technical, has to be nailed, double nailed, to prevent blowing, what have you. And that's I think it would look odd if it was any lower degree. We have actually reduced the effect of the roof purely by putting in hip ends rather than gables to try and soften the roofscape. But I don't see any reason why we should alter the degrees of the roof.
Okay, Patsy?
So, just so it says here, the proposal is to be 5.51 metres to the ridge. What was being proposed by the objectors is that it should be 4.9. You're saying you can't really do that, or that you can do that?
No, we could do that, but we're only talking about, sorry.
Other members? No. Right, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Members, we're now in session. Archie?
Thanks very much, Chair. I had a good look at this, and obviously there's been quite a change since the planning in principle application came forward. I think we've got to agree that we have the planning application in front of us, and for us to change the architectural design of the actual application would be a change in application, therefore we can't do that. So we have to look at the thing in front of us as it is. Having a look at the previous one, the planning in principle, and the new application, the full application, I don't see any issues with this particular one. So therefore I would go with the recommendations.
Ian?
Can I just get one small point of clarity? Is it 5.51 or 5.15 in height? Because if it's 4.9 being requested, I thought it was 5.15. It's only 10 inches of difference. It's the clarity on that point, please. But I'm minded the same as what Archie is saying at this moment in time.
Judith?
Yes, it's 1.4, I think it says that the ridge height would be 5.51.
Alistair?
I'm not quite sure, Chair, whether or not Councillor Crothers seconded Councillor Driver, but if he hasn't, I have no compunction in seconding Councillor Driver's motion. Thank you.
Peter?
Can we just go back to Judith's slides and just establish whether it is a single story or a 1.5 story, please?
Can I help you, Peter?
Well, unless I'm not saying something, I'd say that's a single story.
Any other members? Ben?
Yeah, it's just a question in relation to the metre-high dike. I mean, I noticed that it is quite an open plan area, and that sort of seems to be one of the characteristics of that. So I think what I'm really asking is there any need for that? And would that not actually make it more separate and distinct from the rest of the actual area? And is there any, can that be something that's required by condition that you don't put a big dike up?
Judith? No.
The dike was part of the application and was considered to be acceptable. It's not required for anything, I don't think.
That's the application we're looking at today.
It was just considered acceptable.
Gillian?
Thank you, Chair. It was just, we need to go back to Councillor Geddes' point. Councillor Crothers, were you happy to second after hearing the response? Okay, thank you.
Patsy?
Yes, lack of compatibility, which was brought up as a reason for objecting to this proposal. Is that OP1? Did I pick that up right? Because I don't see it mentioned in the report. But I just wondered what your opinion was on that, whether you feel this is a compatible building in the situation, and whether it does actually, the siting and design as policy OP2 states that it should be a high quality design and contributing to the existing build and natural environment and should relate well to the scale, density, massing, character and appearance. Wonder whether you really feel that this building does do that.
Judith?
On paragraph 4.5, I discussed the considerations I felt appropriate, and although the proposal did differ in some respects from the other dwelling houses on Rhonepark Crescent, that some of that being the finishes, the style, the changes and different finishes were considered in some respects to be an improvement. The use of natural slate rather than concrete tiles was welcome, and whinstone rather than reconstituted stone. So although it's not exactly the same in respect of the fact that the finishes I felt were of a higher quality, I considered that acceptable, and also the location and the siting of the dwelling.
Is this incompatibility, was that OP1? Is that OP1 or something? Because I don't see it here in this.
I mean, OP1 is, if you look on page 70, that's the overarching policy in the LDP on development considerations. So that actually covers the broad brush acceptability of development. I think Judith is correctly in 4.5 really looked at OP2 in respect of this in terms of the quality of design materials and the context of it.
Right. We've got a motion and a second there. Is there any way otherwise minded, Gillian?
Yeah, just to confirm at this stage, we have a motion by Councillor Driver, seconded by Councillor Crothers, to approve the application subject to the conditions detailed in the report. And it was just to see if anyone had any other.
Otherwise minded? Nope. Gillian, read it.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that this application has been approved, subject to the conditions as detailed in the report. Thank you very much.
You now move on to item 6, which is Hollybank, 5 Laurieknowe, Dumfries, 15/B/3/0/1. And speaking on this one is Lindsay Cameron. Lindsay?
Thank you, Chair. This is the application for the change of use of a hotel to a house in multiple occupation. This first slide is a location plan showing 5 Laurieknowe, with Laurieknowe to the northwest and Rosemount Street to the southeast. This is a view of the application site from Laurieknowe with the existing access in the foreground of the photograph. Moving into the site, this is a close-up of the existing building at Hollybank. The application is for change of use of the building only, so no external alterations are proposed. Panning round to the left, this photograph shows the existing car parking area to the front of the building. And panning right, this is a view along the southwestern boundary of the application site, where there is an existing vehicular access linking the front and the rear of the site. Moving through to the rear of the site, this photograph is taken from the southern corner, looking across the rear of the building and existing parking areas. This photograph looks into the site from the Rosemount Street access. And this final photograph is taken from Rosemount Street, looking towards the access to Hollybank, which is located behind the red car in the middle of the photograph, between the sandstone building and the white flat-roofed Church Hall building. The proposals were considered to be in accordance with the development plan, and therefore the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Members, any points of clarification? Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. Excuse me. I've got a couple of points I would like to be clarified by the planning officer, if possible. The first is with reference to the comment on paragraph 4.7, where it says quite correctly that there are currently 2 other houses of multiple occupation in the area, and 2 have been are no longer in use. But my question, therefore, is, though, surely could these other former houses of multiple occupation be brought back into use without need for being brought to planning? They're currently not in use.
Judith? Lindsay?
Sorry. No, they're currently not in use. I believe from speaking to the licensing officer that their license has been revoked in planning terms. I don't think they originally required planning permission because of the scale of them, and therefore it's unlikely that they would need to apply for planning permission should they want to reopen them.
Alistair?
Thanks, that's my first point. The second point is with reference to the documentation and the development plan policies as listed from the bottom of page 79 to the top of page 80, and it mentions planning circular, on the top of page 80 it mentions planning circular 2/2012, houses and multiple occupation guidance on planning control and licensing. Members have not got sight of this document. Is it possible for us to get sight of this?
All right.
Just for clarity, that's not actually a council document, it's a Scottish Government circular, so it is available on the Scottish Government website. By flagging it up here, it was drawn to members' attentions to allow them to look into that if they'd so wished. I'm at the mercy of the chair and this is whether you want to go for a recess to allow members to get copies of that provided and read it, but I would suggest that the development plan policies are actually overriding in this one.
I think we have that in nearly every application, like, and as I say, it's up to the members to go into that if they want to go in.
Yeah, I'd refer Councillor Ritz to paragraph 4.6 because that references the relevant part of the planning circular on planning and licensing. That, in actual fact, it mitigates in favour rather than against.
Thanks for that information, Tom. Andy?
Thanks, Chair. 2 questions for the officer. Does the site actually include the coach house? That's the first bit. And the second bit is, what's the current status of this building? Because according to the papers here, it's a care home.
Yeah.
The coach house doesn't form part of this application. It relates to the main building at Hollybank only. The application is, as stated in the description, it's a change of use of a hotel to a house of multiple occupation. If you refer to paragraph 1.2, it says that while planning permission was granted for the change of use of the hotel to a care home and some internal works have been carried out, the change of use has not been implemented and therefore it remains as a hotel.
Thanks, Lindsay. Any other member?
No, sorry. So I'm not clear. So what you're saying is that it was never actually, the change of use was never formally taken from being a hotel to a care home?
David?
Okay, thanks.
Just to be clear on this, just because planning permission is granted for a development, unless that development is implemented, the previous use remains the authorised use. So in this case, it is definitely a hotel.
Andy?
Thanks. Just for clarification, so if the work was started to make it into a care home, but wasn't actually formally opened as a care home, does that mean it was a care home or was it a hotel? So there's a huge difference to this here.
David?
Unless the use was formally implemented and opened as a care home, even for 1 day would be sufficient to secure that planning permission, but internal alterations and things like that don't fall within the planning domain, so the use would still remain as whatever the previous one, unless it was formally opened as a care home.
Thank you. Member? Thank you. We'll go to the applicants now. The objector, sorry, Claire Crossan. Claire here? No. We'll go to Sharon File speaking on behalf of Graham File and Karen Hay. Sharon, you've got 6 minutes. I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Thank you. You can see quite clearly from the plan that the planner has shown you this morning that Hollybank has 2 points of access and egress. One, as you saw, is very steep, very narrow, very poor visibility display and leads onto the very busy A780 Laurieknowe. It's undoubtedly the case that whoever is living here is going to use the other access and egress point at the back onto Rosemount Street, which is wider and flatter. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The difficulty with the access and egress point at Rosemount Street is it also suffers from a terribly poor visibility display in both directions, and I can't stress this carefully enough. This is a busy street, residential primarily, many families live in the street. It has a busy hotel, it has a residential care home for the elderly. We also have technically an HMO on the street at number 25. It's 6 adults living under one roof in assisted care. It's not an HMO name, but it is effectively an HMO in that 6 adults, unrelated adults, live there. We've never had any problem with that, never any objections, residents. It is a busy street, as I'm telling you, but most importantly, we have the really busy Maxwell and West Church and Halls access from Rosemount Street. I have a huge concern about that. It generates a massive footfall in pedestrian terms, but also in vehicular terms. Rosemount Street, being primarily residential and being of the character and age that it is, there are very few properties with off-street parking. Parking's already at a premium. It's a struggle being used by Howgate Street, being used by Galloway Street, and we're about to add effectively, potentially, another 20 vehicles using the street. I have huge concerns about it, particularly given the number of youth users and the footfall of children. There are over 120 kids attending Macbeth Church Hall for Beavers, Brownies, Guides, Scouts, Cubs every week of the year, and they have to cross the pathway 3 metres from the main access and egress point of Hollybank. Parents double park because they already can't get parked and kids have to run out. It's a major safety issue and not mentioned anywhere in the council's roads officer's report. I mean, I do think that the unusually high youth footfall in the street makes it highly unusual in a residential street, never mind the hotel, the care home and all the other houses on the street. I think you'll find, if you have access to the letters of objections that were lodged, that one of them, there were many of the Uniformed Youth Organisation leaders lodged objections, but the most relevant one from my point of view, and that I concur wholly with, was one of the long-standing Brownie leader, who doesn't live on the street, but she's been the Brownie leader at Macbeth for a long time, and she sums it up really well by saying there will be a fatality, and it's likely to be a child. My other issue, which I've touched on, is parking. At the point of submitting an application, the applicant stated she would provide 20 spaces for 20 rooms. The internal layout of the property has been changed. If we're talking about, it was completely renovated as a care home, but as somebody said, never opened. So its existing use as a hotel, which is fairly historic. It hasn't operated as a hotel for almost 6 years. It had 14 bedrooms, none of which were ever filled to capacity. And the dynamics simply were that, yes, there was the odd function. It wasn't all the time. There was no way this hotel was at capacity and generating the volume of traffic that we're about to see if this application is granted. If we look at the potential for 20 double occupancy rooms, as I understand it, there is also the issue of the coach house, which apparently has been left out of the application. But who's going to live in the 2-bedroom coach house? Who's going to park their car there? Who's got another 2 cars potentially coming in and out that access? Indeed, the council's roads engineer or roads officer states in an email of the 22nd of April that he approved from a roads perspective, but subject to the minimal council standard of parking spaces being provided, which was 0.7 a space per unit, plus 30, which is a space per unit. It's 20. Now, in fact, if you take the coach house into account, it should in effect probably have been 22. My husband, Graham File, who I'm speaking on behalf of today, is a chartered civil engineer of 20 years, 10 of those chartered, and specialises in roads and traffic safety. As soon as he saw the application, he had huge concerns that there was no way 20 spaces in this car park was achievable. He measured up and submitted his detailed objections and reasoning for that. It's interesting to note that the report now states that the recommendation approval is approving the recommendation and saying that there is subject to an approved layout plan, I believe is the term that is used. My husband queried that on the basis of the original application and the roads officer's recommendation of 20 spaces, to be told that the number had been consciously left out. Now, I think we can all infer that was because it clearly is unachievable. And in that respect, I think everybody has to consider how much weight could be
30 seconds to go, Sharon.
Okay. I've indicated to you, we have too few parking spaces, we have a huge youth footfall, we have Laurieknowe Primary School adjacent, we have a childcare nursery with 100 preschool kids, we have 120 attending uniformed youth organisations. The other major concern from the roads engineer's point of view is he talks about not increasing the traffic flow. Now, on the basis of, my husband looked at the guidance industry standard for traffic generation.
Thank you, Sharon. That's 6 minutes. Have we got any questions, Sam? Can you remain in your seat, please? Sharon, can you remain in your seat? Any member got any questions for Sharon? Thanks. Take a seat now, Sharon. Emma Henderson, please. Emma, you've got 3 minutes and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Okay, thanks. Good morning. I'd like to add to Sharon's objections for the planning application. I live 2 doors up from the proposed development, and I also own a private nursery situated in Laurieknowe, which is approximately 40 yards diagonally opposite 5 Laurieknowe. My husband and I wrote to the planning department to air our concerns regarding planning issues such as traffic, access and parking. But I'd like to use this opportunity to talk to you about a more personal issue which are not directly related to planning regulations. The issue I would like to raise are regarding our community and in particular the children in our community. The area around Laurieknowe and Rosemount Street is populated by many children. There are 318 at Laurieknowe School and 107 enrolled at my nursery. The church hall directly adjacent caters for approximately 100 brownies, cubs, scouts and guides. These 500 children, along with the 12 or so children that live in Rosemount Street and those that are looked after by grandparents on a regular basis, give a very significant and dense population of children in this local area. The applicant is a businesswoman and I believe has 4 or 5 other HMOs in the vicinity, and my concern is that she will need to run her business at a profit. And although her initial intentions will be to attract professionals, the reality is that her or even a subsequent owner could rightfully use the HMO to accommodate non-professionals, as this will not be a condition of any planning decision. It is not unforeseeable that this property could be occupied by people receiving local authority housing assistance and could easily include...
Can we stick to planning matters if possible, please?
Okay. It's certainly not a case of it's not in my backyard, but I think that with careful consideration you'll agree that this is not a good location for this type of HMO development, with so many children and other vulnerable groups using the street. As no further applications or reference would be required to switch from accommodating to professional to non-professional people, by approving this application, then the committee members would be granting tacit approval for this very situation of placing potentially dangerous people into a close vicinity of literally hundreds of children and other
30
vulnerable
seconds,
groups.
Sharon.
Thank
Do you remain seated?
Oh, sorry.
No, you had 30 seconds
Just
to go.
dying to go. Sorry.
Any members? No. Thanks very much, Emma. No, Shona McNaught, please. And you're speaking on behalf of yourself and John McNaught.
Yeah.
Shona, well, you've got 6 minutes, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thanks. Could you keep the planning matters if possible?
As you already are aware, I'm quite sure Rosemount Street is mainly a residential street, although, as my friend and neighbour has already said, there is a residential care home and a very busy hotel on the road. It's a very unusual street in that it has the access and egress from Axwelton West Church and for its halls. The church has a very healthy congregation with a number of elderly parishioners, but also it is the home to several very active youth organisations, as we've already heard: Beavers, Brownies, Guides, Scouts and Cubs, and my husband is indeed the Cub leader. Both of my children attend these organisations and also participate in the Sunday school. I know that there are well over 100 young people who are coming in and out of there on a weekly basis. The majority of them, all of them are under 16, but the majority are under 10 years of age, with not as much road sense as I'm afraid we would like them to have. The safety of these children is of paramount importance to us and to our community, and we are very, very concerned that should this go ahead, we are not going to minimise the risk of something serious, an accident happening in the future. With respect to the planner and regarding her statement and report of the recommendation, I feel it's disingenuous to say the least. In the immediate vicinity of our thriving community, we have 5 other properties with HMO licences. There are 3 in Galloway Street, 1 at Hope Place, which straddles 2 buildings, both of which are significant in size, and also Laurieknowe House. I understand from local knowledge that 1 of these properties is currently not being used, and perhaps a second. However, it is, I believe, due to the fact that there has been a bereavement in the family, and following this, there is subsequent family dispute. But it is the intention of the family to reopen that property as an HMO just as soon as they can resolve their differences. If this one were granted, that would bring the total licensed HMOs in our immediate vicinity, I believe, to 6. I'd also like to draw your attention to the property situated at number 25 Rosemount Street, which is an HMO but by a different name. It provides care, social care for 6 vulnerable adults, and it's not something that we have ever had an issue with nor objected to. In addition, I believe that there is also a property at the Laurieknowe end of Turregal Street which provides temporary accommodation for adults and families. Again, in essence, this is a house of multiple occupancy. By granting a licence for this one, you would in effect bring the total number of houses of multiple occupancy to 6, with the additional 2 I have mentioned, within a very, very close proximity to Rosemount Street. In my respectful opinion, I think that's saturation. Surely it's not the planner's vision to destroy the character and amenity and community of this area, and it would not be in alignment with Part A of Policy OP1. It's not a case of not on our doorstep. We're a very tolerant community. Some of the HMOs in our immediate vicinity, however, have caused us problems previously. A bench which was situated at the end of Rosemount Street had to be removed a couple of years ago as a result of antisocial congregation by residents of local HMOs, which also involved drug use and residents finding used needles. Having said that, we have not taken issue with any of these, nor objected to any of these licences, and as I have indicated, we simply feel that this is a step too far, particularly given the size. In conclusion, I have urged you all to refuse this application. The applicant is, as we've previously heard, a business lady with whom I believe has several other of these properties. Her concern is not for our community, our children, or the vulnerable elderly, but simply running a business and profit. I mean no disrespect to the applicant whatsoever, but she is no different from any other business person. I need you to understand that if this application is granted, then it will be open to the applicant and or any successor in the future at any time to decide to change her target market and provide accommodation for different types of people. The risk involved with that, in my opinion, is very real. There is a proven prevalence for HMOs to be used frequently to house prisoners who are coming back into the community. And whilst Ms. Caird is not wanting to do that, there is nothing to say that should she sell it, it will not happen in the future. As we've heard, there's a huge footfall of vulnerable children in the area, and we are very, very concerned for the real risk that this could provide. 3 metres from the church hall, opposite a nursery, Laurieknowe pupils passing on a regular basis, notwithstanding our own children. It's a real worry, and I hope that you will take our concerns on board and refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Shona. Any members, any questions for Shona? Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Shona, I'm just a wee bit confused about the number of HMOs in the vicinity.
Right.
You quoted a figure of 5, is that correct?
Well, there's Laurieknowe House. There is one above the hairdressers in Galloway Street. There is one that's currently closed that is just below the post office. That's the one with the dispute, the legal dispute that is going to reopen.
I think that question was already answered by the officer when it was asked, Jim.
On the other side of the road, there's a further 2. Then 25 Rosemount Street, which is just behind some of the houses, almost opposite the entrance to Hollybank. There is a care in the community property, which has a further 6 residents.
Right, Jim.
What the lady is saying is clearly at odds with the
I know. We've heard 2 of the licences have lapsed and they can't be used as HMOs. That's the information we're given by the officer.
Chair, can I just ask a point of clarification there? What relevance is that to the planning application?
I don't know. There's quite a lot here. It's not relevant to the planning. We've been a wee bit lenient, actually. If there's no other members. Margaret Newlands, please, speaking on behalf of herself and Fiona Saddington. And could we try and keep it to the planning issues, please, Margaret, if possible, not personal opinions, etc.
Right, well, I'll see, I'm not that expert in all the ins and outs of that. I would like to speak on the issues of safety, amenity and character of our area. You will have gathered from the previous speakers that those of us who live in and around Rosemount Street feel very passionately about our street, and we do take great pride in the fact that our street is a real community. I moved there 40 years ago, and the key reason for moving there was the safety and the family ambience that would make it an ideal place for living. And at that time, all the houses in question in and around Rosemount Street were family homes, including the Dalston, otherwise known now as Hollybank. And over time, many children have been brought up in the street with parents and adults looking out for them and sharing responsibility, and this is a situation which still exists today with the current wave of younger children. As indicated in my letter, there is no play area in the vicinity of the street, and the street itself has historically been the playground and meeting place for young people living here, and together with the involvement of adults who all know each other, has been the envy of other areas in the town that are less fortunate. Young people and their development has been a key feature of the street, and as you've heard, there are many young people come backwards and forwards to the church halls, and we do have many residents in the street who are volunteer leaders with young people. In fact, the Duke of Edinburgh's award group formed there and called the Rosemount Group has partly led to the development of the Open Award Centre, now based at Oasis Youth Centre, with Dumfries and Galloway Council, the operating authority. So our concern for this change in character of the street is a very real feeling for us, as you will have appreciated. Inevitably over the years, there's been an increase in traffic due to the commercial development of the larger properties, like the Eden Bank and Roseland Nursing Home, and of course the Dalston, when it was enlarged from a family home to being a 14-bedroom hotel. Only 7 of the properties in Rosemount Street have off-street parking, and we've already got a substantial number of cars from the surrounding area where they have limited parking themselves. And it's inconceivable that the 20 or so people living in Hollybank will not significantly impact on the daily traffic flow with the associated dangers of mixing traffic and children. Graham File, the engineer, is confident that with regard to traffic standard guidance, that this new development will give a very different profile of traffic movements and increase traffic flow significantly. We also are concerned, of course, with the coach house that doesn't seem to be featuring, but it would in fact perhaps be likely to increase the traffic number and the people involved. The residents of Hollybank will enter and leave by Rosemount Street entrance if they can get parked in their own car park in the first place, because the Laurieknowe exit is steep, has an extremely poor visibility splay, and is also onto a busy main road. Our street has a diverse and mixed age group of residents who look out for each other, and in valuing what we have here, there is very little movement, with most people staying for many years. We have no objection to accommodating housing adults who need individual care, and we had no objections to the Dalston Hotel being a residential home. However, the prospect of what we believe, in our view, a 6th licensed HMO in the midst of a residential area with no guarantees of what the future might bring is very alarming, especially when we've got several in the small area. Given the scale of this particular HMO and the concentration of them in our immediate vicinity, I would urge the committee to refuse the current application. I believe this is one of the reasons that HMO applications have been rejected in the past. We know that the council is very involved in developing the community aspect of places such as Queen Street, and would appeal to them to consider the potential damage that might be caused to an existing neighbourhood community. I hope you will understand that as a supportive and involved street community, we feel great concern at the prospect of a substantial increase in traffic arising from the 20 or so transient and temporary professional residents, and also the fact that none of them will be known to us. Inevitably, if you grant this application today, you'll be risking the safety of many children and other vulnerable users of our street, altering the character of our community forever, and hammering yet another nail in the coffin of the Dumfries we know, love, and in which we are very proud to be a part. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Members, any questions for Margaret? Right. Thanks, Margaret. You may take your seat. Of the applicant, Juliet Caird, please. Thank you. You've got 3 minutes, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Thank you. There's one personal opinion which has been expressed by previous speakers about me, which I do need to correct. I'm not simply a businesswoman who cares more about money than the safety of children. When I was 17, a little boy on our farm drowned in a sheep dip, and I feel responsible for that. As a result of that, I'm well aware about safety issues involving children, much more aware than most people, and will take great care to advise my tenants to drive carefully. Before purchasing the property, we were told that Hollybank did not need planning permission for change of use. After purchase, we were told that the planners had changed their minds about this. Because of that, we had already booked some tenants, and what's happened is we've been advised that the place has planning permission for a hotel. So we have some guests in the hotel who are staying on a hotel basis, paying on a nightly rate. Demand for good quality, affordable accommodation in Dumfries is high. We already have 5 HMOs with 49 tenants, and we easily keep the houses full with peaceful, long-term professionals. Hollybank is better quality than the other HMOs, being refurbished with double rooms and large en-suites. Proposed changes to tenancy law are likely to increase the demand further. Even if the demand fell, other HMOs would be affected long before the very best quality one. It's inconceivable that any future owner would choose to exchange professional tenants for unemployed ones in such a good quality house. One guest is a sheriff's officer who needed assurance that we would never rent to non-professionals. There's also a consultant surgeon, dentist, 2 occupational therapists, a senior manager, owner of a renewable energy company, and a reporter. They all have responsible jobs and need a
Juliet, can you
peaceful
stick to
home.
planning issues if possible, please?
All right. They won't disturb neighbours and are very unlikely to kill any children. With respect to parking and traffic, a hotel with a bar and reception would attract more cars than an HMO and be just as much of a risk to children. There are 20 parking spaces and only 20 rooms. Less than half of our HMO tenants have cars, as they're close to the town centre.
30 seconds, Juliet.
Oh, the suggestion that there would be 40 tenants is incorrect. In an HMO law takes into account sitting room and kitchen spaces, and facilities would never allow more than 25 tenants. In any case, there are only 20 rooms, and couples are extremely rare in HMOs, as professional couples can afford a flat together. This is in contrast to hotels. The coach house has its own parking for 2 cars. The roads departments have approved 20 spaces. In our HMO on White Sands, tenants...
Juliet, that's 3 minutes.
Would it be possible to do my last 30 seconds, as I had to add my defence on the personal remarks about my nature?
No, sorry, but you had 3 minutes.
Well,
Sorry
if it was
about
to
that.
be a hotel, there could be drunks driving.
Sorry, Juliet,
out.
these are the thing. Members, Juliet, can you make it from members?
Yes, it's about the number of people that you would accommodate here. You say that your rooms are doubles and they're en suite, so they're obviously quite of a certain size. Why would that not be allowed to be shared by 2 people? And therefore, you would maybe potentially have more people than
Juliet, could you,
there.
if you go back, you'll be able to use the mic. Sorry.
And also with that, there's obviously no kitchen facilities, so there must be communal kitchen facilities and things like that.
Yes, that's right. The HMO legislation requires to have a certain length of worktops, number of cupboards, number of cookers. There are 2 kitchens there, and the sitting room also needs to be of a minimum size for the number of people. It wouldn't be possible to make kitchen and sitting room facilities are large enough for more than 25 people. But having said that, in our 49 rooms, we never have more than 1 couple at a time in all of those rooms, because professionals can easily afford, two professionals earning a decent income can easily afford a flat between themselves once they team up as twos, and they wouldn't want to share a kitchen.
But what you're saying is that
That's it.
what you're saying is that within your HMO license and the recreational facilities and the kitchen facilities, you would not be allowed to have 40 people living in that
Oh,
house.
no, nowhere near there. Robert Rome from the HMO department could confirm it, or I could bring you the legislation to show you.
Gillian, come in here a second.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to clarify that this is an application for change of use from a hotel to a house in multiple occupancy. In relation to actually getting a licence for a house in multiple occupancy, that's actually the landlord and registration department within the council that will deal with that. This is for the change of use, not the licence application.
My reason for asking was because it's the volume of traffic that could be generated, and if there were 40 people there, then you could assume that perhaps there would be more traffic, but there isn't going to be, so that's fine. Thank you.
Any other members? Thanks, Juliet. That's fine. Members, we're now in session. Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. A lot of points brought up from both parties there, from both objectors and the applicant, obviously. I think both bringing forward valid points. But, I mean, there's a lot of questions there that I don't know if we'll get answered today. So I think I'm probably more minded to take a site visit and ask for further information when it comes to the roads officer. There's been very strong arguments put forward in regards to children's safety. We have to take that seriously as a council, certainly as a planning authority. The extra volume, which has been touched on by Patsy, will there be extra volume of traffic there compared to what's already been answered? And do we have a roads officer here to actually answer the questions in regards to visibility, the access, and what's being proposed, because the numbers are not contained within the report, as advised earlier from one of the objectors. So, I mean, I'd be certainly minded to defer this in the short term. There is an over-provision question that came up potentially, but I think I need to see on site the level of traffic, the level of foot traffic, children involved here, and as far as what we've been advised from potentially being a professional civil engineer, chartered engineer, is in conflict with what we're being received from roads advice. I'd like to get all these things bottomed out, Chairman, if we could.
Gillian?
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the over-provision, that would be a matter for the landlord registration come the licence application. However, see if anybody wishes to second Councillor Carruthers in relation to...
To a site visit, as I say, we've got these site visits, and they say we arrange site visits, and half the time, half the members at the requested site visits don't turn up to when it's the official visit.
I'm happy to second Councillor Carruthers.
Ian?
No, Chair, I'm not happy. I would go with the officer's recommendation and sticking purely to the planning issues. Quite rightly, the issue of traffic and parking was brought up, and I feel that it's been dealt with in the conditions. I'm also aware that this previously was a hotel, and consequently those issues would have been live at that time. But I would simply move the recommendation.
Gillian.
Thank you, Chair. Just at the moment we have a motion for a site visit. We don't yet have an amendment for the site visit.
Jane?
I propose we don't go on a site visit.
I'll second that.
Okay. Sorry, could we take a vote on the site visit? We have a motion by Councillor Carruthers, seconded by Councillor Diggle, to go on a site visit. We have an amendment by Councillor Maitland, seconded by Councillor Martin, not to go on a site visit. Councillor Martin?
Amendment.
Councillor Dempster?
Amendment.
Councillor Blake?
Amendment.
Councillor Carruthers?
Motion.
Councillor Dick?
Amendment.
Councillor Diggle? Councillor Dryborough?
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson?
Motion.
Councillor Geddes?
Amendment.
Councillor Gilroy?
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop?
Abstain.
Councillor Maitland?
Amendment.
Councillor McCautry?
Motion.
Councillor McComb?
Amendment.
Councillor McCutcheon?
Abstain.
Councillor McKee,
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson,
Amendment.
and Councillor Witts.
Motion.
With the 11 votes to the amendment, 5 to the motion, no site visit will be taking place.
Aye. Ian?
Sorry, forgive me for having gone in the wrong order, but I would move the recommendations as I previously indicated.
Any other members? Oh, yeah.
I think I'll go back to the point. I mean, I moved for the site visit, but I mentioned a lot of other things as well in regards to the advice we've had from roads officers. There's a conflict there in regards to the advice we've had here today, and it's certainly apparent it's come from a professional person.
What parts of, you're not sure, Ian?
It's
not in the report.
It's the points on the visibility, Chairman. I'd like to ask the question in regards to that. There's been points made. I know what clarity in regards to saying there's extra volume of traffic. I'd like to know what the extra volume of traffic is in regards to that. Does it comply with the road standards? We're saying it's been at the very lowest step of road standards. I'd like to get a clear understanding of what that is, please, Chairman. That's the first part.
411, it's in 411, Ian. 411, in conclusion, erection of a dwelling, sorry, wrong. Just jumping in there. It's 411. 411, the Council's road officer is content that the development can be accessed in safety and has confirmed following a site visit that 20 car parking spaces in accordance with the appropriate standard can be provided, etc., etc. As I say, there is a report from the roads officer in there.
I mean, I would prefer to hear that from a roads officer rather than yourself, Chairman. I'm aware it's within the report.
No,
it's been raised.
The roads officer has had a site visit and that's his recommendations, Ian. Do we think he's got to change them?
It was clarity I was asking for, Chairman. I'm not trying to persuade MD either way. It's points of clarity is what I'm asking for.
It seems like you're being awkward, Ian, because you didn't get your site visit.
Oh, well, Chairman, I can only have to take what you're saying, but I find
Right.
it unacceptable to say the least.
It's a
question I'm asking.
What question? Right.
It was just members, if we could perhaps remember this has been recorded and keep our professionalism. Thank you.
Ian, have you got an alternative proposal?
I would ask, Chairman, that we ask for further advice from a roads officer. That's the point, and if you're saying that's not the case, I'd like that clarified. Because until I get such information from that professional...
Could ask what the members want. Yeah. Tom?
I think the whole nub of the matter seems to be the traffic problem. Is it possible to put a condition that the only egress and entrance to the premises will be by Laurieknowe rather than Rosemount Street? Because the main objection seems to be the flow of traffic to and from Rosemount Street. So could that be a condition that with no traffic access from Rosemount Street, all access to the site will come from Laurieknowe? Is that be possible?
David?
I would suggest that such a condition would be ultra vires. It wouldn't meet the test of Circular 4 1998. It wouldn't be enforceable for a start. It's an existing access for an authorised hotel. And as Lindsay's correctly identified in the report, that hotel could be bought by somebody, could be, as has been seen along the road, I think it's Eden Bank Hotel, be revised and suddenly become very, very popular. There would be no planning control over that. And you have two existing accesses. It wouldn't be legitimate for the planning authority to put a restriction on the use of existing accesses. So no, I don't think that could be legitimately attached.
Patsy?
Do we have a motion on the table yet?
I have a motion, yes.
Is it seconded?
No, Councillor Dick was recommending approval as detailed in the condition. However, that's not actually a motion yet. We've no seconder for that.
Jane?
If it's needing a seconder, I'll second it.
Stephen?
Okay, it's just a question actually to do with the provision of car parking spaces and the provision of recycling spaces as well. So this is more, before I can go either way, I'd like a wee bit of clarity. In the condition in the papers, it actually asked that a revised scheme for car parking layout be submitted. And it was raised by one of the representatives, but it doesn't actually specify that 20 or a minimum of 20 spaces be in that revised scheme, which is what the roads officer, who obviously isn't present today, recommends. So could that be added to the recommendation? Sorry, the condition that a minimum of 20 car parking spaces, so a revised car parking layout with a minimum of 20 spaces. David?
Again, I draw members' attention to paragraph 411, where the roads officer had actually visited the site and he considered that 20 car parking spaces in accordance with appropriate standard can be provided on the site. And then the important bit is, albeit not in the arrangement shown on the submitted site plan. So in other words, he looked at the site and felt there was suitable space to get the minimum parking standard of 20 spaces in the site, but not in their specific arrangement as shown on the plan. It could be rationalised to be in a better way. Very deliberately, the number 20 doesn't appear in the condition for the simple reason that that would tie you to 20 and 20 alone. It could be that it can come back with a rationalised space that actually is more than 20. It might be the case that a scheme would come back which would actually have more effective spaces, but was 18, 19, who knows. But that scheme needs to be submitted. If members want the figure 20 in there, it could be attached. We did consider that, but there are potential limitations in doing that. So it's open to members. If you want that number in there, it can be put in there. Roads officers are satisfied that you could get 20 spaces in there.
Patsy?
I would... Sorry.
So apologies, Patsy. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I think what I was trying to get at was a minimum of 20, but as you say, there needs to be a revised scheme, and as we've also clarified, we've not yet determined the application for the appropriate HMO licence for a number of people that would be living there, so there's a couple of lack of clarities there. The second thing was to do with the number of compost bins or recycling facilities. Now, I don't know when Nithsdale's getting its new bins or whatever, but I don't actually know how much space that would take up as well, so would that be factored into the amount of available space? And how could we capture that in a condition as well, so as we're not leaving ourselves short?
Again, I mean, that's another reason why that no specific number was put in condition 1, just to allow variability for things such as that. I don't know when the recycling will be coming into Nithsdale, but certainly it is something that would need to be considered.
Patsy?
Thank you. I would like to put forward an amendment that we refuse this application and the reasons are because it doesn't comply with Part A of Policy OP1, which requires a new development to be compatible with the character and amenity of the area and not to conflict with nearby land uses, and I believe that this application does. I'm referring to the establishment use, including nursery, primary schools, sports centres, residential care home, church and church hall, which all result in high activity levels in the immediate area. And so therefore I feel it is against OP1.
I think if I could add to that as well, I'll certainly second that as a recommendation. Would like to had my points clarified earlier about in regards to that, but was unable to get that. But I think there's also road safety issues there. So under road safety issues there is as well, because there's a particular high volume of children in that area. That's a real concern to myself. I would add that to the, if that's possible, if Patsy would accept that. But I would certainly, at this stage, because of the lack of information as well, that we certainly refuse it.
Fine, Ian. Alistair?
Thank you, Chair. We didn't get our site visit and I voted for it, but I'm not huffy about it. But with your indulgence, I would like to mention that the road situation in Rosemount Street, and members may not be aware of it, but the last 50 yards is a one-way street. And I know the area and I've seen violations of that. So if we do approve this, I would like to see signage clarification, maybe new people in this facility may not be aware of that.
Andy?
Thanks, Chair. Just something maybe if Gillian can clarify for us. We've got an application here for up to 20. It will be the licensing. We'll decide the number. Am I right?
Gillian?
Yes, it would be, when the application is lodged for an HMO licence, it would be landlord registration, and if any objections perhaps were received, it would be the licensing panel that would deal with the application.
Thanks for letting me back in, Chair. So, Gillian, it does mention in the report here that from the HMO's side of it, that there were no objections when it was first advertised. So does that mean that avenue is closed? So we're left with it's 20? That's the clarification I'm looking for.
That would be perhaps something that the Landlord Registration Department would be able to confirm. The only issue in relation to 4.7 is the local authority discretion in relation to over-provision, but they've not actually said anything further. I wouldn't want to say anything contrary to the Landlord Registration Department that would deal with that.
Marion, you want back in, Andy?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just on, because we haven't got that clarification and because we're getting a lot of concern here about road safety, and I do appreciate you've got a thing here, I'm actually wondering whether there's an opportunity here to defer this until we can actually get the two officers here and ask questions, rather than move straight, make a decision today, which might be flawed in the future.
Joanne.
Just really, the change. This is the application in relation to planning for the change of use. The HMO and all the licensing issues surrounding that are actually dealt with through the licensing landlord registration and the licensing panel. This is in relation to the planning matters. And just on that point, we seem to have a motion by Councillor Dick, seconded by Councillor Maitland, to approve the application subject to the condition detailed in the report. And we also have an amendment by Councillor Gilroy, seconded by Councillor Carruthers, and it was just to double check with David in relation to that amendment.
Well, you probably know what I'm going to say. It's the mentioning of the policies in there, where, again, as officers, we've assessed it does comply with policy. If you remove those wordings in it, then that, as with the previous one, would be acceptable. But could you read back what you would have that way?
Councillor Gilroy, would you perhaps read your reason?
Referring in the report to paragraph 4.4, which is in part of principles of development, I'm saying that this should be refused because it does not comply with Part A of Policy OP1, because the new development is incompatible with the character and amenity of the area and will conflict with nearby land uses.
So the development conflict with nearby land uses?
Yeah. And those are listed below that, which are things like children's nursery, primary school, sports centre, residential care home, church hall and church, which all result in activity levels in the immediate area of being relatively high.
Yeah, I mean, again, the officer advice is given in 4.5 contrary to that, but as long as the OP1 bit was deleted, then I think if you were saying that you were concerned that the proposal would result in, and then the various issues raised there in terms of the effect on the existing uses within the area, that I'd be more comfortable with that.
Well, if you look at 4.
Move on to item, sorry. Move on to item.
The application site is on the edge of a small area of open space at the entry to Rankine Heights. The proposed kinpar unit, shown in red, will cover the substation which can be installed as permitted development. It obviously doesn't require planning permission. It will be located in the centre of an area to be formed of gravel and paving, the outer area edged in blue, about 50 square metres. It will be linked to the road by a 3-metre grass street track. Existing trees on the site, there are 3 to the left and 2 to the right, will be augmented by shrubs and trees to help to screen the unit. You see from the front elevation, the unit will be of reinforced glass fibre, battleship grey in colour, 6 metres by 2.5 metres on the ground level and 2.5 metres in height. That's the side elevation. And next is a photo of an identical unit at Newton Stewart. In this case, the client wanted a screen fence in place of trees and shrubs. The colour is exactly the same as battleship grey. This is a view of the entry to Rankine Heights from the opposite side of the 7020 road. The open space you can see on the left-hand side. A closer view of the open space, the unit would be erected near the fence on the left-hand side. A photo showing the housing opposite the site, which have an outlook towards the site and the main road. A close-up of the fence, the length of the unit would occupy about 3 of the panels, and it's in the centre of the fence. And the height of the fence varies between 1.6 and 1.8 metres. Approaching the site from within the estate, the site's partly screened by vegetation. As you come further around, a view of the site, the unit would be to the left of the trees, which you see on the right-hand side. Finally, a close-up of the fence, which is so the unit would be immediately to the left of those trees. The proposal would result in the removal of existing overhead wires in the area, and the recommendation is to grant subject to the conditions listed in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. Members? Could I just remind members here that this is for the enclosure, the substation. We have no control about the substation. The electricity company will probably install the substation because we've no control over that. This is just for the enclosure of the substation. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. It was just a question on the flood risk management team's references to the management of the pluvial flows. So I was just wondering how that, I mean, it's not explicitly mentioned in condition, but it is referred to it in the report at 2.2 and 4.10. Is that something that's implicit in the conditions, or could you maybe explain that a wee bit, please?
Yes, surely. They didn't require a condition, but it's dealt with as an informative. It's simply drawn to the attention of the applicant, and that would form part of the decision notice. You'd have to take preventative steps if a flood situation did arise on site.
And it's just to confirm that that would apply, obviously post-construction, that measure would be in place to deal with the fluvial flows.
Sorry, yes, for all time.
Any other members? No. Tony Hancock. Tony, this is on behalf of Lochmaben Community Council. You've got 3 minutes, Tony. I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Tony Hancock, Vice Chair of Lochmaben Community Council. The planning application relates to the erection of a kinpar enclosure around an existing substation to be located at Rankine Heights. No such substation currently exists. We therefore suggest it would be more appropriate if this application was presented to the Planning Application Committee if and when the substation is installed on the site. Claims by the applicant that the development does not offer any flood risk are incorrect. Claims by SEPA that the area has only a medium likelihood of surface water flooding are inaccurate, as this area floods several times every year. Agency assessments of flood risks have in the past been widely inaccurate, resulting in many serious flooding issues. What we do know is that the more concrete that is introduced onto green areas, the more risk of flooding increases. It should be noted that the alternative sites, which are close by on the B7020 and Riggs Head Road, were rejected by the applicant due to known flooding issues. Issues relating to the risk of flooding are of great concern to the residents of Rankine Heights. Scottish Power claim that they are committed to ensuring that the development is to be as discreet as possible. Placing the unit, which is in excess of 29 cubic metres, in the middle of an open green space on the corner of the estate, next to the crossroads, where all the residents and the passing visitors will see it, can hardly be described as discreet. We are also advised that the existing overhead line needs to be replaced due to its age and condition. We live in an age where the technical advances have resulted in the reduction in size of all things electrical. An iPad has 10 times the power and is 10 times smaller than that of a 10-year-old desktop computer. Why then is the proposed kinpar enclosure 10 times the size of the existing unit it replaces? We are surprised that there are no objections from road services, despite the proposed development being directly opposite two driveways, only metres away from the main entrance into Rankine Heights, and a sharp bend adjacent to the crossroads at the B7020. The report states that the site is not identified as a protected open space, which may explain why there are a lack of serious investigation into the alternative site. This open green space is in an area where the local residents pride themselves in having well-maintained gardens. It has been a feature of the estate since it was built.
30 seconds, Tony.
Thank you. The applicant claims that the kinpar enclosure will take up only 10% of the open space. The local residents feel that this unsightly, oversized, unsympathetic structure will result in destroying this open green space feature for the foreseeable future. I urge the committee to review this application. I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Members? Nope. Right, thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
We're now in session. Peter?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, by putting this kinpar in at the bottom of Rankine Heights is going to change the approach to Rankine Heights, and I feel that we ought to do as much as possible to mitigate the new development. And what I'd like to do is to add another recommendation to it that would read something along the lines that in addition to the wooden fence, a fast-growing evergreen hedge suggests Leylandi, as it is in keeping with other established plantings in the area, be planted around the kinpar enclosure to form a box hedge that will be at least 60 centimetres in width and be allowed to grow to a height of 2.5 metres. The initial planting should consist of evergreen plants that are at least 90 centimetres in height and be planted at a density of no less than 18 plants per square metre. The hedge to be maintained and be kept in a tidy state during the life of the kinpar and that it'll be cut at least once a year. Well, what I was saying there, Chair, is that the recommendations are really a bit wishy-washy, and they don't actually specify exactly what should be done, and I would like to tie it up a lot more.
Chair, yes, obviously is open to members to tie down more, but condition 1 is the standard condition that we require, which does allow the applicant to submit details. There's no harm in expanding on that if members are so minded.
Fine. Jane?
Do you know, I'm sort of, although I understand what Councillor Diggle is trying to do, I sort of wobble over the notion that Leylandii, and I'm quite sure we can come up with something equally effective in terms of screening, but not actually Leylandii, which leads to its own problems, you know. So I am happy enough to leave the recommendations as they stand, because it's quite clear that there must be a careful scheme. I think the officers have got the general gist that it's got to be properly screened, it's got to be effective, but I will leave it to the officers to come up with a correct and appropriate scheme.
Ian Dick?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't necessarily think we should be as prescriptive as Councillor Diggle had suggested, but I certainly appreciate the physical impact. I think there was a 4.12 suggests that any plans for any growth or anything to mitigate the physical impact would obviously need to be maintained, and perhaps that could be included.
Pierre?
The reason I suggested Leylandii was because it's fast growing, and if you just to the right of that photo, there is actually another Leylandii hedge, so it would be in keeping.
Yeah. Ivor?
Chair, I maybe missed it in the papers, but is there any reason it has to be battleship grey and you couldn't maybe tone it in a wee bit? If it's green hedge you're putting up, you know, put a green colour of fiberglass.
Again, the committee feels strongly about that. They have said that they can make it any colour as appropriate. Green is actually one of the hardest colours to tie in with existing planted areas, but just looking at the fence there, it might be more appropriate to have it that sort of brown colour actually would maybe tie in better with the surroundings.
Councillor McKee?
Thanks, Chair. Certainly, on looking at that, I would have been asking for it to go back and discuss with the electricity board where they want to put this. It's a wide open site, but what's been suggested, I'm quite happy with what's been suggested, and ensure that there's proper maintenance of the proposed coverage takes place over the years, and it's not just left to run wild. Thanks, Chair.
Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. Just it was the point you made early on. I think just so I'm clear in my mind what you were saying, the utilities company have permittable development rights, so they could actually erect the station itself, but we're talking primarily about the screening here, how it's best screened, so no, fine with that. Thanks, Chairman.
Yeah, Gillian?
Yeah, just to clarify, we have an additional condition put forward by Councillor Diggle, and we have a move put forward by Councillor Maitland to leave the recommendation as it stands. We also have a move from Councillor Dick in relation to the maintenance, and Councillor McKee. Would that be approved as per the conditions in the report with these additional ones, all of the ones mentioned? We've not got a clear motion at the moment.
Sorry, Chair, just to be clear, that in terms of the maintenance, that's actually covered by condition 2 anyway.
And would you be quite happy, Peter, just to go with recommendation 1? without the Lilla.
Yeah, I would be, as long as there's a clear message sent to officers that this must be screened to the greatest degree possible and also maintained, if that can be agreed.
Noted and understood, Chair.
So, Chair, and the colour, can you do something?
Yes, I've got that. That's got that as well. Come on, David. The extra condition with the colour. Yeah, that's it.
So members have agreed to approve the application subject to the conditions detailed in the report and a condition in relation to the colour. Thank you.
Right, I'm pleased to say the sandwiches and that have arrived, but can we just get on to, let's do number 9, 24 Brewery Street. It's 24 Brewery Street, the Dumfries, /15/P/3/0092, and we've got Beth Halliday here to speak in this one.
Thank you, Chair. The application is before the committee as a statutory consultee has objected to the application and officers are recommending approval. This application is for the installation of 4 new UPVC windows and 1 door and alterations to a window opening to form a new doorway and the formation of steps on the front elevation. And this is at 24 Brewery Street in Dumfries. I'll just take you through the plans and the photograph. This is the location plan, just showing where it is on Brewery Street down near to the sands. And then the plans showing the existing and the proposed elevations and floor plan. So as you can see at the moment, to the left-hand side of the plan, for the existing, and then obviously to the right for the proposed. And then these are the cross-section and profiles of the windows and the door. So this is just looking towards the application site, but looking towards the junction of Brewery Street and the Vennel to give an overall view of the surrounding area. So 24 Brewery Street is the second building, slightly lower than the one in the corner, which is number 2022. And then just homing in on that again. The building on the corner is actually a listed building. 24 Brewery Street isn't listed. So just homing in again on the actual 24 Brewery Street itself, which shows with the 3 sash and case windows to the first floor, and then at the moment a roller shutter door and a grill over the ground floor window. And this is just showing the street scene on the opposite side from number 24 Brewery Street. And then homing in on one of the first floor windows to show the state at the moment. And the grilled ground floor windows and the metal shuttered door. To conclude, the application is recommended for approval.
Thanks, Beth. Members, David?
This proposed new door, I take it it'll be set back and the steps won't come onto the pavement.
It will just be the same as just reflecting what's already there at the moment. So yes, it will be coming out onto it'll just be the same as this one that's here with a step at the moment.
Jane?
Could you possibly put up the first slide, which was the actual now and proposed, please? Do you know, while I appreciate what's going on, was there any thought given to the actual shape of the windows? Was there any input into that, particularly the window, the large-scale window down below, and the type of door?
Obviously, when the application came in, we hadn't had any pre-application input in that. But the original windows that came in when the proposal first came in have been changed to what we're looking at today. They were chunkier in appearance, the originals that had been put in.
Right back, Jane. Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. Apropos the windows and the comment of Roeburn Community Council, I take it that they wish it to be commensurate with windows in adjacent buildings which have conservation status, but this one doesn't. Is that what they are meaning when I read their objection? I'm looking for some clarification from you on that.
David.
Certainly my reading of what they're saying in paragraph 2.1 on page 110 is that they're looking for the existing windows to be restored and a like-for-like replacement to be made. It's maybe worth just pointing out that in an area which is a conservation area that didn't have what's called an Article 4 direction, such as this one, although it was made a conservation area, I think about 1970, it never had permitted development rights removed, so people could legitimately change the windows on domestic properties during that time. So that's why you see in the area quite a lot of what you might term bog standard UPVC windows that have gone in, and Beth's photos showed them. What we look for in a conservation area these days is actually to ideally get something like a like-for-like replacement, or at worst, to try and get a sash and case UPVC window so it actually has the relief and the movement of a traditional timber sash and case window. The only difference is the actual material, which we will accept in non-listed buildings in a conservation area, but listed buildings will not.
Yeah, this is still a point of clarification for the officer. Jim? Jim? No?
Can I ask the officers then, what's the status then of the appraisal, the Dumfries town appraisal? I mean, Folkmar Nix did a really lengthy piece of work on Dumfries and its buildings. And I don't see it mentioned in here. I mean, I might have missed it, but I didn't see it. Because, you know, there is an opportunity to mend things, and it should be taken. You know, I'm absolutely delighted that the applicant is going to bring things up, but is there any policy issue here with respect to using that piece of work that was done? You know, when you see something like that, you ask yourself,
David?
What the situation is.
And the conservation area appraisal is a background paper to the local development plan, but the policies cited on page 110 from the LDP, they're the overriding ones. Obviously, we do look as well as there's a material consideration there about the managing change in the historic environment windows from Historic Scotland on that as well, which was taken into consideration.
We have Douglas. We've not got any objectors, so could we have Douglas Bodell, the agent, please? You got 3 minutes, 3 minutes, Douglas, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Afternoon. This building is typical of a number of buildings in the town centre, and particularly to the White Sands area as an old building. This building has lain empty over a number of years and progressively falling into disrepair with little care of maintenance. Our client has came to the area and purchased the building and is now outlaying money refurbishing and repairing the building. Renewing the windows is one part of that, and which will not just be providing a repair but create much better and improved entrance area to the ground floor. It should be there commended to see improvements and for money to be spent on repairing town centre buildings. For this reason, we agree with the officer's report and ask for you to approve this application.
Thank you, Douglas. Members? Jane?
Do you give advice as to the shape and type of the building? Did you give your client advice as to what would be appropriate that building in terms of historical situation?
I'm afraid I wasn't directly involved in this case, but as conservation accredited architects, we do give a certain amount of advice to clients, but again, some clients do take on forward how they see they want to develop a building, regardless of our rights in some instances.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Douglas. Members, we're now in... Sorry, Ian, Douglas, sorry. Oh no, sorry. There, we're now in session. Ian.
Thanks, Chair. Just with particular reference to 4.3, I would have no hesitation in moving the recommendations.
Jim.
Well, personally, I'm not happy at all, and I'm not happy because we can't be running double standards in the Galloway Council. And there's some conservation areas where we tell residents that we expect them to reinstate windows back to the original style. And yet here we find ourselves in a situation where in the middle of Dumfries town centre, we are encouraging UPVC windows to be installed. I think it's a flawed system and I think we need to fix it. I'm certainly not happy with it. I could quote us an example in Sanker where there was a window installed by a shopkeeper. You couldn't have seen it unless you're Russian spy satellite looking down on it. And the folk were made remove it, and that wasn't that many years ago. And we had a situation where we were telling folk in conservation areas, we will allow you to retain UPVC windows, but if you want to replace them, we expect you to revert back to the old style. And I don't think we should be doing that. I'm quite happy to accept this is where we are, but it's no right. And people in conservation areas, it's about a set standard, a set mechanism that folk can easily understand what they can and cannot do, and that doesn't appear to be the case here.
David?
I never thought I'd find myself in a position of actually defending the use of UPVC windows, but here we go. In a listed building, no, absolutely not. And the only cases where we have taken enforcement action that I'm aware of have been where they have taken place in a listed building or where they've taken place in a conservation area where the windows were completely inappropriate design. They were a far chunkier, inarticulate design that was just flat. It didn't actually have the sliding sash and case design. These particular windows, as Beth rightly said, we got amended because the original proposed windows were not of an appropriate design. These will, to all intents and purposes, and you can see ones out in Great King Street, look like timber sash and case windows. The only difference is their actual construction. So we've taken a pragmatic stance within conservation areas where considerable alteration has already taken place to allow these sort of things. In a listed building, absolutely not. We will retain a hard and fast line on that. But as far as this one goes, it is one which we sought amendments and we consider what they're actually now proposing to be acceptable and possibly even an enhancement in as far as they will be double glazed and therefore have better energy retention. But certainly I'm not aware of the case you're referring to in Sanker.
You're involved in it.
Was I? We'll discuss this afterwards.
Jane?
Well, I sort of struggle to agree this. I mean, I think it's such a mistake not to be firm about attempting to enhance. So I would like my dissent recorded. Everybody seems to be agreeing with this, and I'd like my dissent recorded on the basis that the lower story, in particular the door and the shop windows, would be detrimental to the character of the conservation area and significantly affect the appearance of the window.
Councillor McKee?
I find myself agreeing with Councillor Dempster here, and I think I've spoken to the chairman about it and I got my fingers up, but that's another story. I've got concerns as well, and fair enough, I think these windows do, they look like the sash and case, wooden sash and case, but I still think that we should be looking at replacing like for like. And how you can have a house that's listed or a building that's listed and the inn next door is no, there's a detrimental effect surely if you're doing these things on the houses the houses round about this listed building. So I think we should, as Councillor Dempster says, we should be looking at these things a wee bit more closely.
It was an apple and an orange, I think we were talking about, David. David?
I mean, it's very interesting to hear these comments. I mean, if we were, as officers, given a clear steer by committee that you were only going to be prepared to accept timber sash and case windows within a conservation area, then that would be very interesting. That's not the view that we've picked up on from committee before, and we thought we were following a more pragmatic line. But if there's a harder line being instructed from committee that you would like us to only accept timber sash and case windows in a conservation area, then I would be intrigued to know that.
Jim, come.
Thanks, Chair. I note that the majority of windows in the surrounding buildings are already of UPVC. I would commend the officers for their pragmatic approach, but I would also say, in agreement with Councillor Dempster, that we need to show greater consistency in this area.
Thanks, Jim. Ian?
Just to pick up on the points that David said, I can understand where he's coming from, but that would be the EI committee, it wouldn't be this committee. This is to govern each, or take on each application as it comes forward. I think the question is asked about consistency, and I think we should have a consistent approach. I think we have got a consistent approach, and this is evidence of it. I've come up against it in some guises, but it's always been overcome and a solution found. But I would disagree that this committee should have any effect in regards to future policies. It should come to the EEI committee in particular, no for here. And I've seen the UPVC where you cannot tell the difference. But if Jim's referring to an inconsistent approach, that is completely wrong. Should be addressed.
Archie?
Chair, but we're looking at a planning application here. We're not looking at policy, making policy on the hoof. And I think if there's an opportunity to raise this elsewhere, then fine, we should do that. The application is in front of us, and I think we should go about the recommendations.
Stephen?
Archie's just done it, so that's fine, thanks.
The application has been approved unconditionally with Councillor Maitland's dissent recorded. Thank you.
That's fine. As I say, as lunch has now arrived, as I say, can we take a break? Back here at, say, 2:10? Or 2:15? Make it a wee bit. 2:15? Right, members, welcome back. We're now going to item 10 on the agenda, the Benbrack Wind Farm, North of Casfairn, 14/C/2/0071. And we've got Dean Clapworthy going through this.
Thank you. This is an application for the erection of 18 turbines for over 50 megawatt schemes. So it's an application under the Electricity Act, and it's made to Scottish ministers, and then Scottish ministers subsequently consult the council for the council's view on it, amongst many other consultees that they consult with. So Scottish ministers are the determining body, and the council can offer their opinion as to what they think of the scheme. That's the position of the site. It's actually much clearer in the agenda papers on page 113. It's around 5 kilometres north of Casfairn. What you can see there is the route running southeast to northwest. That's the A713 Galloway tourist route. You've got Lochdoon there just to the left. That's in East Ayrshire. The northern boundary of the site, or the northwest boundary, is the boundary with East Ayrshire. So it's at the very northern limit of the Stewardship district of Dumfries Council area. That's the site that would be subject to the development. So if you move from that to that, it's the area north of the yellow road coming in from the west. And it's based upon Dodd Hill, Benbrack Hill. That map is taken from the environmental statement. It shows the landscape designations relevant to the sort of wider area. The area in lighter green, just to the immediate left of the red dots, that's the Galloway Hills Regional Scenic Area. forms the site is positioned immediately east of the boundary of that. And you've got other designations that apply to the left, applying East Ayrshire. That's a typical turbine. It's not the actual proposed one because that would be finalised later, but it would be a maximum of 130 metres to blade tip, a maximum of 80 metres to hub, with a maximum blade length of 53. The hub height would be varied depending on the final blade length, but the maximum would be 130 metres above ground. Again, that's indicative only, to be finalised at a later stage. It's just an indication of the type of met mast that would be proposed. It's lattice in this situation, 80 metres high. That is the visibility out to 35 kilometres. I'm afraid it's not come out very well. There is colour applied to that map, much more visible in the actual documents. That's the best we could produce for today. What it would show, if you could see it properly, was that within Dumfries and Galloway, the visibility is most focused within the first 10 kilometre radius, with much less visibility as you move out from that. A lot of the visibility, as indicated on there, is actually coming from East Ayrshire to the east of the site. West of the site, sorry, not east. This is a view from the A713 to the west of the site. Benbrack is pointed out. That's one of the hills that the site is based upon. And that's another view of the same hill from the minor road that leaves the A713. Dodd Hill, the other hill that it was based on, is behind Benbrack from this view. Now, these are images taken from the actual environmental statement showing visibility or likely visibility of the site. That's from the core path, 667. We're about 873 metres from the nearest turbine in that image. The hill that it's based upon there is Dodd Hill, the hill behind Benbrack, and then further beyond the viewer there is Benbrack behind Dodd Hill. That's the limit of the spread of the turbine from that view. This is an image from Cairnsmore of Carsfern, the highest hill in this part of the Galloway Hills regional scenic area. We're about 5.7 kilometres from the site, looking down northwards towards the site. You can see just on the left limit there, Lochmaben, that's in East Ayrshire. And this is taken because it's another image that shows the visibility, widespread visibility of it. This is from within East Ayrshire. This is on the western shore of Lochmaben when you're in East Ayrshire, looking across, looking east. Benbrack's there on the horizon, and you can see the spread of the turbines over the hill. And what we have on the right-hand horizon is Cairnsmore of Carsfern. This is one of the wire lines demonstrating the visibility of the site from one of the nearest residential properties called Waterhead. Just over a kilometre to the south, looking north here. The proposed Benbrack turbines are in blue, and what we have in yellow/orange is another Section 36 proposal that's currently undetermined, called South Kyle. And this is one other from a property that the last property in Dumfries and Galloway as you head north into East Ayrshire. The property sits by the side of the A713, and its front elevation faces the site, and it's at about 1.5 kilometres from the site in this view. This is just a junction detail, the modification that would take place to the proposed new access road that would come off the minor road that you'll see in later images. New junction, and the green indicates what they call an overrun area, an area that's levelled and surfaced with grasscrete so that abnormal loads can overrun this area without any obstruction. and that detail will be applied approximately in the position where the arrow indicates. You've got the mining road leaving the A713 on the east side, across the cattle grid, and the overrun areas are coming on the left-hand side, and the new junction will be formed just where the arrow is, in approximately that position. And this is a view looking at the mining road as it leaves the A713, just indicating where the overrun areas would be for abnormal loads coming south from East Ayrshire. The report says that there will be no unacceptably adverse impacts on Dumfries and Galloway interests. So we're recommending that no objections raised subject to the 20 conditions that are set out in the report. Do acknowledge that the independent landscape architect did raise some issues of landscape and visual impact on East Ayrshire, but East Ayrshire have been consulted, as have Dumfries and Galloway, and East Ayrshire have actually raised their own objection to the scheme directly to Scottish ministers. So what we represent his interests as they concern Dumfries and Galloway Council and Dumfries and Galloway Council's area. That's it. All I've got to say at this time.
Members?
To ask a question first of all, it's just we've got no representatives, objectors, or anything in this from local communities, people living up around this part of the world. Do they go to the Scottish ministers, and we don't get to see them when it's on this kind of system? Is that the way it works?
Good.
Yes, that's absolutely right. The application goes directly to the Scottish ministers through the Scottish Government Energy Consents and Deployment Unit. So any representations have to be made directly to them. So that's why you actually see, I think it's, Nino mentioned it in the report there on the, find the page, yeah, there we go, page 124, not applicable, and explaining why there's no representations here.
Ian?
Yeah, Dean, can I ask you to go back to the site plan? No. Yeah. From what you said, the application site, or the site, the turbines, the area to the north of the Yellow Road, why is the site itself so large? It includes quite a vast area to the south and also to the east, sorry, to the west of the 713, which doesn't appear to feature at all.
Dean?
The applicant hasn't offered an explanation, and I can only assume it's to do with land ownership and the third part, the landowners who are associated with the application. That's the landholding that would, the applicant would take an interest in. Although, absolutely, the development is limited to that area. There's no suggestion anywhere in the application that they have an interest in developing any of the other areas for any future wind farms, but obviously that would be for another day if it ever was.
Jane?
Yeah, I was interested in that as well. I mean, it does look as if they've got a turbine on absolutely the top of Benbrack. That's right. Doesn't look like good, does it? If you look at the map, Dean, that Ian asked for at the beginning. Oh no, it's on the contour line just off it. No, it isn't. Okay, thank you.
Dean?
Yeah, I can just confirm the Benbrack tops out at 448 metres. At least one of the turbines, two of the turbines will be above the 440 metre contour. I've done a contour check on every turbine, and the lowest, I mean, that's approximately correct. They're across the top of the hill. not in every case, but there's Benbrack topped out 448, 2 of them are at 440, and then down from there.
Ian, Dick?
Thanks, Chair. Something I meant to ask over a number of these applications there. When you're assessing visual impact and cumulative impact and so on, is there ever any consideration taken into account of some of the pylon structures that pervade the landscape?
Dean?
In this case, we outsourced the landscape comment with independent landscape architect, and what she's done, she's assessed it largely against approved, implemented, and proposed wind turbines, and there isn't a specific assessment against pylons or comparing it with other vertical infrastructure that's in the area now.
Blake?
Oh, my official title this time.
Too many Ians.
I'm speechless after that. I appreciate that one of the consultees will be the MOD, but I know from personal experience, having been chased up the A713 with low-flying jets, to follow the road right at this location. Has any consideration been given to that?
Dean?
Scottish ministers will look at that because they've consulted directly with MOD, and MOD have provided a response to the energy consent unit. So the MOD have been asked directly by Scottish ministers what their opinion is and what their consultation response is to that. We've got it, but I don't know what it says. As far as I recall, I don't think they object.
Got any other members? No? Any other members? Are we happy to agree with the recommendations?
Just to confirm, in relation to item 10, it was been agreed to go with the recommendation to raise no objection to the section 36 application. Thank you. Subject to conditions.
Got item 11 in the agenda. Sharon, 11 Ashgrove Terrace, Lochmaben, 15/B/4/0137. And we've got Torrell, my speaking in this one. It's Torrell's first meeting. He's Norwegian. Right. So whenever you're ready, Torrell, I'm going to run through the drawings.
Thank you, Chair. This application, it seeks the consent for the erection of an extension and a detached garage and carport at 11 Ashgrove Terrace in Lochmaben. The applicant is the sister of Development Management Assistant Beth Halliday in the planning office. So this slide is the site plan, and it shows the application site and the proposed extension and garage, and the location of the extension and garage is patched in red. This slide shows the existing elevations and plans. The south and north elevation, that is the side elevation, and the east elevation, that is the rear elevation of the property. This slide shows the proposed plans and elevations. There is a double-story element to the extension on the north right side of the drawing, and the single-story element is to the east, the rear of the dwelling house. The ground floor would form a kitchen, utility room, and shower room, and the second floor would have a shower room. The extension would be constructed in smooth render and natural slate roof. This slide shows the proposed garage and the plans and elevations. Again, materials would be smooth render under natural slate roof. This is the front elevation of the dwelling house. seen from Ashgrove Terrace. The replacement garage would be to the right in the photo, and the proposed extension would not be visible from the road. This is the rear elevation where the proposed single-story extension would be, and the two-story element of the extension would be to the right in the photo. And that's just a closer up picture of the north elevation where the two-story element would be in that corner. And that porch that's there currently would be removed. And this is the rear garden, just showing the dwelling house is set in a large garden. The application is recommended for approval, subject to one condition, that is regarding the garage to be domestic, which you could read on page 100.
Any members, any questions? Doral? Nope. Members were out in session. Archie?
Agree with the recommendations, Chair?
Fine, yep. Agreed. Gillian?
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that the application has been approved, subject to the condition as detailed in the report. Thank you.
Going to item 12 on the agenda, 80 to 82 Queensberry Street, Dumfries, 15 stroke A, stroke 3, stroke 0008. And we've got David Enough of them today. David, we've got David Cartmel speaking in this one. Whenever you're ready, David.
Thank you, Chairman. The application is before committee because the applicant is related to an elected member, the member being Councillor Hislop. Can you move that around here? Sorry. 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 Doing something. Sorry, but sorry. That's the one. Yep. Yep. Next. Yes. Start again. The application site's on the east side of Queensberry Street. The committee previously approved a change of use to a tea room and an upper floor beautician, and this application is for the signage. Side view of the front elevation, which shows the remnants of the original sign. I think it was Jardins, I think, was the original occupier. The front elevation showing the traditional shop front, and to the right of the windows, kind of side on, you can see the existing frame and letters. This is the most recent picture, which shows the works which the committee approved under previous permission underway. The existing elevations shows the cast iron sign, which is to be overhauled and repaired. Proposed elevation showing new cream lettering on the cast iron frame. Doesn't show terribly clearly. And the ground floor, black letters with gold shadow on the cream fascia of the shop, and a transfer on the window with cream letters with black and gold edges. And finally, a photographic impression of how the vertical signage will look. The teapot will be formed as a cutout of a teapot shape. And the recommendation is to grant with a condition.
David, members, any questions for David?
I like the way
you're serious.
Oh. No, I was just going to say, I like the way there's a sign there for people to slow down as they go by.
Members, are there any questions for David? No. We're now in session. Members, agreed? Agreed. Well, thank you for your patience today. If I have no other further business, call this meeting to an end.